Well, good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who didn't have to go through the COVID era, this is what it was like. I'm very happy to welcome you to the Tuesday, October 2025 session in our series on innovations in AI from Asia. And I also want to say a thanks very early morning to our panelists who are coming in live from India, where it's 5 a.m. right now. So, to move things along, delighted to talk about what's going on in the development of sovereign AI in India. And we've got a great panel. Our leadoff speaker will be Ms. Paula Mariwala, and Paula is a very good long-term contact. She has spoken for us at least probably 5 or 6 times in our seminars at Stanford, including at least 3 times in person. We were just going through that. Paula studied at Stanford. She is the former president of the Stanford Alumni Association in India. She studied physics at Stanford, but she went to work for an IT firm. She was a director of the IT firm Hindutron. She's a long-term angel investor in India and has backed some of the ventures that really became quite hot in India over the years. She's also the founding partner of Aureolis Ventures, which is a venture capital firm. Joining Paula will be Mr. Sharad Sanghi, who is the founder and CEO of Neysa Networks and also the chairman of NTT Global Data Centers and Cloud Infrastructure India. Um, he has a long-term experience developing high-performance computing infrastructure. He founded NetMagic in 1998 that was acquired by NTT, and they built out over 19 data centers in India, including data centers really that are targeted towards processing AI. His responsibilities now also include uh, managing data centers in the US, Europe, and the rest of Asia, as well as India. And also joining us this morning is Mr. Raoul Nanavati, the founder and CEO of Navana, which is a voice AI tool. Raoul is a serial entrepreneurship and has been involved with startups in an area close to my heart, music and also computer gaming. So we have a wonderful way to talk about what's happening in India. Let me ask Paula to give some kind of comments up front to get us started.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, from a very early morning in faraway India. But great to be here. Like Richard said, Richard and I go back a long way. And I think I first spoke in this seminar series back in 2013 when India and indeed the world was a different place. So was the technology landscape. So it's wonderful to be back. I think I've in the interim spoken 4 or 5 times, and always exciting to address Richard's audience. And in the prep up to this, we learned so much ourselves. So today, of course, the topic Richard has selected is very, very relevant for us in India and for everybody else who's joined in as well. It's a topic on sovereign AI and particularly sovereign AI for India. And it is something that is close to my heart because, we are at a juncture in India where we see a lot of changes happening and we're ready to leapfrog into different realms. So with that, let me give you just a quick introduction about Aureolis and myself. As Richard said, I've been in the VC world for about 2 decades now, primarily in India, but I also invest in other parts of the world. I founded a fund called Seed Fund back in 2006, and subsequently started something called Stanford Angels in India, a platform for Stanford alumni to invest in innovation in India. And then in 4 years ago, I started another fund called Aureolis Ventures, slightly different, which is an evergreen fund, so which allows us to take longer term bets in sectors like deep tech, health, climate, and indeed with new technologies like AI cutting across all these sectors. And we have a very large and interesting portfolio, primarily in India, but a few also in the US and Singapore. And my team, of course, has a lot of Stanford connections. Joe, my partner, I think, who's also on here, is an ex-entrepreneur, Stanford alum, who now helps me run, fund innovative companies across sectors that I mentioned. And, at Aureolis, we are looking very closely, of course, at AI. So next one, above. So I want to just start off before I get into some of our own portfolio companies and how we are investing, to touch upon the topic that Richard has very aptly picked. What is sovereign AI and why is it relevant for India? As as the name suggests, sovereign AI means where the sovereign state in India, in this case, owns and controls the data models, infrastructure, with a focus on local vernacular context. And this is really relevant for India because, as you all know, India is highly diverse. It's a large country, both as a landmass and also demographic, um, and there's so much diversity uh, that one needs to really have the local context to apply something like an AI. It's exceedingly important to have a sovereign approach to something like AI, um, for security reasons and for independence of the nation. And particularly in today's world, I think where US and China are leading in AI investment significantly, I think India needs to sort of leap ahead a bit, given the market demand and potential of such a large and complex country. As you can see, US and China are racing ahead with large investments in AI, both private and public. Um, and India is trying to catch up. We have ways to go, as you can see from the numbers I put up on the screen, but we are looking at a lot of support from the government and private sector to really apply AI in various ways. As you can see, the different layers, we have each one of these layers sort of addressed, and I'll touch upon all of these as we go along. We can, next one. One of the interesting things about India is something called India Stack. Some of you may have heard of something called digital public infrastructure in India, which is really the backbone for our identity, called Aadhaar, which powers individual identification, real-time payments, which is UPI, United Payment Interface, and secure data portability. These are government rails, but they are completely interoperable, and a lot of digital transformation has happened on the back of this. And this is really going to drive our own sovereign AI as well. So along with the digital public infrastructure, we have an Indian AI mission where the government is committed more than $1 billion for setting up the infrastructure for computing, as well as the rails for building apps on it. In addition, there are many schemes to promote startups which are building AI-based applications or models. Um, we are committed to investing in our own GPUs, indigenous compute infrastructure. Um, the key to any AI model or AI application is the data set. And like I mentioned, we have very many languages, a lot of diversity. So we do need data which is uniquely contextualized for our country. So, and along with the DPI, we've really tried to create our own unique databases and language assets. There's a lot of effort on enabling enterprise AI apps using vernacular and giving opportunity to get into sort of regulated spaces like banking and finance, telecom, etc., where one can use AI for long returns. And of course, we have a very vibrant VC market, which is going to push all the startups. There is a large domestic market. So all the things are stacking up, for really having a vibrant ecosystem for AI startups across the layers that I mentioned. Um, One very interesting factor before we get into details is that India, as a consumer user of things like ChatGPT or Claude, is really up there. I think we are the largest ChatGPT user base, which shows the kind of interest that Indians have. And imagine once this is fully unlocked with our Indic languages and voice, we will have even more users. So really, it is a very defining time for India and indeed the AI space with a 1.4 billion population and with the digital infrastructure I mentioned, to really get started on what we are calling vernacular first um, and our own compute infrastructure with both for consumer, for investors, and for all stakeholders. But really interesting to see how India has completely leapfrogged as it did in social media as individual users for ChatGPT, etc. If you look at the global context where India fits in the AI wave, we're lagging in terms of investments. The capital concentration is largely, of course, US and China, and we're not there yet. But like I said, there is huge amount of growth possible. We are going to concentrate much more on policy and infrastructure build out, not maybe foundational models, or we may not have too many patents. We're rising from a lower base, but I think we have selected a path which suits our own demographic and context. So if you look at all the factors, the investors are focusing based on the policy tailwinds, uh, the market, and the capital available. I think the focus is on prioritizing, sectors like, finance, retail, healthcare, manufacturing. And investors are going to look at, because we don't have infinite capital, I think we are going to look much more at the intersection of where policy is going to push some of the applications. We're going to look at, measuring ROI and a disciplined approach to application of AI. And that's what, as investors, we are looking at, where enterprise adoption for AI in sectors that will be good, and then grow the market. Like you said, like I said, there is a lot of headroom to catch up with other leading countries. So if you look at the kind of investments that are happening, all the major funds are, of course, looking at AI-related investing. All the international funds are very much present in India. There are many Indian funds as well as some government funding. Where we are focusing as investors in terms of round sizes is 50 to 100 million checks. And we are wanting, 10 to 20 million checks, not so much 100 million plus, and at reasonable valuations. There are a few that we'll touch upon which have gotten a higher amount of funding, but I think as investors, we are looking at, because it's early days, I think the sweet spot is at 10 to 20 million, and a lot of funding is, we are looking at a lot of deals in that. And in the kind of subsectors, if I look at Indic foundational models, Sarvam and Kruthrim, we'll touch upon them later. The first LLMs, India first LLMs, we've got some large funding. But besides that, I think a lot of Gen AI applications vernacular speech and voice applications and enterprise productivity applications are where VCs are really active, and we're getting a lot of very good ideas and deal flow uh, in, in these sectors. So as VCs, we are really excited about this. Next one. So these are some of the logos you will see. I think Sarvam and Krutrim have the two India-based foundational models, which also have agents built in, which have up to $1 billion of valuation and large amount of funding. There are others logos that you see, and we'll talk about a couple of them. We have our own infrastructure cloud company, Neysa. We have Sharad here who will talk more about it. And in terms of voice AI, we have Navana. We also have other enterprise and application companies in media, in telecom, in enterprise productivity. Um, so it's a growing roster, but we will touch a little bit more upon a couple of them as we go along in today's seminar.
Paula, do you mind going back to your slide on the India stack?
Yeah.
I've got a follow-up question that before you finish your talk. Um, this one. So do you see all levels of the stack receiving sufficient attention, or is there something that you think needs to be focused on more in order for India to achieve its goal of having sovereign AI?
I think we have done well so far in the digital public infrastructure for payments, for real-time payments. And the key there was interoperability as well as data security. I
Uh-huh.
think we need to continue focusing on this as we sort of make these rails open for building more on it. Um, I think we definitely need to focus a lot on the security angle and the
Yeah.
data part. So the policies, so the India AI mission, which is of course got government funding and very favorable policies, needs to focus more on strengthening the infrastructure as well as providing data sovereignty, um, and the internal infrastructure. And maybe Sharad can also talk about it. His company is part of the Indian AI mission, so I think he can talk a little bit more about it. But the DPI data sets that we've been talking about, I think they need to be strengthened a little bit more.
Okay.
But that's
Thank
a
you.
great question because we are banking a lot on this. And I think it'd be great if both Raoul and Sharad also touch upon
Well,
what.
and it really is worth emphasizing how different the situation is in India. Not only do you have 22 official languages, but there are half a dozen different writing systems that
Yeah,
are officially recognized languages.
yeah.
So it's, unlike the situation with what's in the US or even in China, where even though there are very wide dialect variations, the written language is pretty much the same. So, that and also the kind of literacy in India really calls out for voice first. And
Mm.
it's exciting to see this. I've interrupted your comments, so I want to let you finish up with your prepared remarks.
But Richard, this is the crux of what I'm trying to say, that we have
Yeah,
a sort of a very different approach because we are a different country. We lend ourselves very well to what are called short, rather than LLMs, the short language models, which are specific, sector specific, index specific, as we call them, based on the language and the local context. Like you said, it's not just the voice and the language, but the data that we have
right.
has to have local context. The tagging has to be very different. And that is something that's why one of our portfolio companies, Navana, which is going to talk later, will really talk about what a challenge it has been, but what a huge opportunity it is as well, to really take this approach. I think somebody who's Prakash, who's on also mention that we have DPDP network, which is sort of infrastructure for data protection, which is also sort of really giving a very good base for using a lot of data that is available. We are very conscious of data protection as well. As you can imagine, it is a big issue, considering we are getting digitized so quickly. But just to catch up, I think, just to come on the practicality of it, we talked about the background, the data centers, the data protection, the digital infrastructure. But the key is also going to be adoption and which sectors will adopt. I think, the enterprises which are already digitized, which can see a great advantage in efficiencies, are adopting this. It's helping them expand their markets as well using things like voice first. So, financial institutions, a lot of retail. I'll talk a couple of healthcare applications as well. And the central bank of the country, the Reserve Bank as it is called, is giving um, a lot of hooks for people to, really catch up and use AI frameworks in finance. So I think it's one of the big applications we are seeing. So I think the startup traction is there with several players, with a lot of enterprise AI agents already making their headway, and slow adoption, but I think it's happening. We're going to come to a turning point pretty soon where a lot of AI adoption will happen in enterprise. And that's where the VC flow is happening. We'll talk about people like Bajaj Finance as examples that Navana will bring out. Next one. So as I mentioned, a voice vernacular speech recognition, a voice first application that is built by Navana with 15 languages, with a lot of proprietary dialect-rich data, which is really very unique to India and which is very light on CPU, because it needs to be affordable as well, and a very good performance, very large opportunity, mixed language input, which is really can work with large, background noise or, muddled speeches and so on. And we're going to get more into this when Raoul actually shows some videos to demonstrate how this is working in a very India-centric approach. Next one. I'll briefly touch upon a couple of other of our investments that we've done at Aureolis for health tech, because this is another sector which we see as growing a lot in India and where we can have really big impact across sectors. So one is a company called BrainSight that Richard, if you remember, we presented
Yeah.
seminar last year in 24, I think in
In our
April.
entrepreneurship seminars in the spring.
Entrepreneurship seminar, and they're really doing well. It's using a lot of data on mapping the brain to do early diagnosis, and they're getting a lot of good traction. It's really going to be a game changer for clinically diagnosing things like Parkinson's, dementia, and other psychiatric and neurological issues. Another company in this space is a company called Zyla Health, where we are using back-end AI agents for delivering much better and continuous care for chronic conditions. Again, using vernacular, this is expanding the market a lot for us. And we are able to mitigate risks, and insurance companies are really lapping it up because they're really seeing a lot of cost reduction, etc., for performing much better insurance-related services as well. And there's a lot happening in AI for health as well in India. This is another sector that a lot of, as you can see, many EBCs are looking at a little longer term view, but I think overall, once you get the data in, there's a lot of scope for really high impact health tech startups here. Next one. I'm going to move now to the infrastructure because India really wants to keep its data. So the compute or the data centers, the AI infrastructure, which is really the bedrock, and there's a lot happening here. India, the government is committed to making sure that, with its India AI initiative, to invest in a large amount of capacity, which is in India. Neysa, for example, is a company that is going to talk today, and they've put up data centers and has joined the AI mission. It's also going to have global growth there. All the large corporates, Adani, Reliance, etc. I think today the announcement has come that Google is putting up a data center, a large one in India. So I think the key here is we want our own infrastructure. We want to protect our data. We want to have security, but we also want to maybe have a pie, maybe a piece of the global pie. Um, some of the people to watch, of course, are Neysa, and many others also joining the bandwagon, like I said, including some large corporates. I think the capacity is going to grow and is really going to again be a game changer for people like Navana, etc., who are building with GPUs based here, um, and be very comfortable with the data security angle as well. And like I said, have a global approach um, to housing of data in India. There's a really big key here. So, like I said, Neysa, yeah, um, it's a sovereign full stack is AI acceleration cloud spanning, IaaS, PaaS, and accelerated SaaS. It's really resident GPU capacity with enterprise SLAs, private clusters, and they've raised enough money. I mean, the founder, as you will hear, is very experienced in the data center space, and has partnered with NTT, so really has a very good global anchor as well. And we'll learn a little more about how this is really accelerating our AI foray, and we'll really see a game-changing position pretty soon in this. I think the key is it's a sovereign full stack AI cloud, and resident in India, fully backed by the whole Indian ecosystem as well. Next one. We talked also that while we are really building on SLMs and India-specific application layers, we do have two Indic LLMs, Krithrim and Sarvam, which has attracted a lot of funding, and they really are building a very complex LLM, which will include the, all the different languages, all the different data types, and they're also alongside building agentic assistance and using the data to make it smarter, as all LLMs do. But they really have their work cut out because it's really very complex. But as I said in the initial slide, once we have our own foundational models, our own LLMs with our own specific data, then, the Indian market, which already is using a lot of ChatGPT, Claude, etc., will just really open up like, non-linearly. And we will have very many applications coming up and scaling really largely. So I think the numbers that you see today will be really different in a few months, I think. So these are the two which you've really heard um, about probably in the international scene, whereas large foundational models are concerned. Um, so just to recap, I think if you look at how sometimes we've non-linearly scaled, UPI transactions are like in billions. We have 1.4 billion IDs issued on a digital platform, 19.6 billion transactions on our payment gateways. So we have really used digital infrastructure well. And so while we may not lead in capital, I think we will optimize for reach and cost, using these digital rails to scale, using vernacular UX to really expand our access, and use SLMs over DPI data to chase model training and create wonderful high impact applications. So really, this is the flywheel of India advantage, which is going to drive a huge amount of AI adoption. So this is where, again, to where Indian startups are focused. It's very contextual, uh, local data, focusing on AI mission, uh, nimble applications, fine-tuned for Indic languages. And this, I'm going to let the other two build more upon this. But the sweet spot is really building for India for the next billion. And maybe that will also come, at a stage where we can take it global as well. Next one. How are we doing on time, Richard?
This is fine, and I think this is about your last slide, isn't it?
Mm.
Is this? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I
So
want to
we're
just touch
doing
upon
fine
as
with
an
time, and you have set up our other two speakers extremely well. I think
right,
if I can suggest maybe Sharad would be good to speak next. Paula, why don't you wrap up what you're saying and let's move on.
correct. So just a quick thing on the thesis of a fund like Aureolis or many other VCs. Um, Indian applications first is definitely going where we are looking at. We're prioritizing context over compute, as in large models, and human augmenting AI, agentic tools that assist ops in decision making with humans in the loop. Uh, Sectors like healthcare, media, telecom, even agriculture. Um, you know, Even the other, I think most of the funds that I've talked to, VC funds, while there's some investment going to models, a lot of it is going into Indic first applications. And where we are really going to bank on is to having our own infrastructure, having our own data protection, having data sets which make sense, um, and really favorable government policies and digital infrastructure. So I think sovereign AI is a way to go. And I think Neysa, Sharad, you're rightly positioned to talk about how and why you are going to be really at the center of how this whole AI ecosystem is going to grow, and how you have so far done and where you're going, and also maybe touch upon, the India AI initiative that you're part of. So with that, I'll hand over to Sharad, and we can always come back to anything. And we're, as I said, very, very positive on the sovereign AI for India. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Paula. And yeah, so Sharad, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Richard, first of all, for inviting me. And thank you, Paula, for that great background. So I'll be speaking, I started a company called NetMagic, as Paula mentioned, in 1998, which was India's first data center company that grew to become is currently India's largest data center company. It was acquired by NTT in 2017. So I'll give you a little bit of background on data centers in India and how they are evolving, because they are the underlying foundational infrastructure where you run your AI workloads. In 2023, July, I started a second company called Neysa. While I'm still on the board of NTT's India business, but I founded Neysa, which is one of the neo clouds, much like what you see in the US, companies like CoreWeave and, Nebius and a few others, right? So I'll touch a little bit about both data centers in India as well as, GPU infrastructure in India. And as Paula said, I'll also talk a little bit about the AI mission. Um, so let's start with data centers. So India currently has about 1.3 gigawatts of data center capacity. Roughly half of that is in Mumbai and the Mumbai metropolitan region. And the rate at which it's growing, it's supposed to triple by 2030. So cross 5 gigawatts by 2030. And so today, about 10 to 15% of the workloads in data centers are AI workloads in India, but this will grow to and those are largely from the hyperscalers like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, of course, and now from neo clouds like us as well. But but this is expected to grow worldwide to 70%. I think worldwide average is a little higher in the US. Maybe in the US, this average is about 25 to 30%, and it's expected to grow worldwide to 70%. Now, the reason I bring this up is this, this is AI workloads are very, very high density workloads. So, for example, when we started data centers in India, we were using each rack typically had about 6 kilowatts of power that was fed to these racks. And today we are seeing racks with 135 kilowatts. The latest Blackwell chipset of NVIDIA. A fully populated rack like a GB200 or GB300 takes 135 kilowatts per rack. So the entire data center industry is completely evolved to now do different forms of cooling. It also creates a sustainability issue. And so the now it's mostly liquid cooled data centers that you are seeing. Again, the very few data centers have the capability of doing liquid cooling in India, but it's evolving as we speak. All the global leaders of data center providers in the world are in India. So you have Equinix, you have Digital Realty, you have NTT, the entire Blackstone portfolio, and so you've got many, many global leaders because it is the fastest growing market in Asia and is probably about the fifth fastest data center market in the world. So the two lifelines of data centers are power and connectivity. From a connectivity perspective, India has now at least in the major metros, and it's even in the rural areas now it's improving, but in the major metros, you have multiple service providers providing very reliable fiber connectivity. And internationally, we are connected through multiple undersea cables. Now there are plethora of undersea cables that connect India on both sides, on the east side as well as on the west side. So we have enough reliability. There was a time I remember when we were building our data centers where we had a major undersea cable cut and we would lose substantial connectivity to the rest of the world. All those days are gone. The data center qualities are absolutely world class. And so, as I said, some of the global players are now in India, and from a data center infrastructure perspective, India has now come of age. So the inflection point in India's data center infrastructure came in 2015 when the hyperscalers like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft entered India. Earlier, people would access these remotely, these cloud services of these hyperscalers remotely. But in 2015, I think it started with Microsoft, then Amazon, and then Google, and now Oracle and Meta, and everybody is here. So now that there's, so they really fuel the growth because that's when, really wide scale adoption to cloud started happening in India. There were some local companies that also set up cloud, including my previous company, which was acquired by NTT. But in terms of scale, the hyperscalers were much larger, and they've all set up Indian subsidiaries and now offering full-fledged services in India. In terms of announcements, so just to close on the point of NetMagic, which was acquired by NTT, currently about 22 data centers, close to 5 million square foot, 350 megawatts out of the 1.3 gigawatts is actually provided by NetMagic, which is now NTT. The second, so there have been a lot of announcements recently, as Paula mentioned in a slide. Google announced a 1 gigawatt campus in Vizag, and in partnership with two Indian data center providers. One is Adani Connects. Adani is one of India's largest business houses. They've partnered with a global company, a US company called Edge Connects, and Adani Connects and Airtel have partnered to set up this. Are going to set up this for Google. It's a 1 gigawatt AI data center campus in Vishakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh in India. TCS, which is a software company, actually announced plans to set up a new subsidiary for setting up a gigawatt campus, again, for AI data centers in India. The Reliance Group also announced this last year. So there are multiple large a lot of capital being poured in, recognizing India's potential. As Paula said, we are the first or second largest consumers of some of the LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude, and so so there's a huge inferencing demand that is coming from global players in India, and so many people are looking to set up infrastructure for that. I'll now switch to the neo cloud aspect, which is what I've started as a company called Neysa, as Paula mentioned. So I'll start with the AI mission, since Paula talked about it and talked about sovereign AI. Um, as far as the AI mission goes, the government set up the AI mission. US had OpenAI, Anthropic, and others. Europe had Mistral. China had Quen, DeepSeek, and a lot of other LLMs. India didn't really have a foundational model when the AI mission was set up. Also, as Paula mentioned, that there are many Indian 22 official languages, many dialects, and as I'm sure Raoul will talk about, people speak in a mixture of languages as well. There's a lot of background noise. So just to be able to run something that is effective in the Indian context, these were all the things that government had in mind, saying that we want to be self-sufficient, we want to set up something on our own. And so the purpose of AI mission was to not only provide subsidized GPU capacity to the researchers. It's actually a great combination of private sector, government, and academia together, because the government has so far they've received more than 100 proposals for building LLMs. They've so far greenlighted 12 proposals, and so far I think a couple of proposals have already got some GPUs allocated to them, and the rest are being set up as we speak. Currently, as Paula also mentioned, the people providers like us have committed in total of close to 38,000 GPUs. That is not any, that's very, very little. Just to put in things in perspective, Grok 3 trained, Elon Musk Grok 3 was trained on a single cluster of 100,000 GPUs. So one LLM had more GPU compute capacity than all of India put together. So we have a long way to go, but there's significant investment that's happening in this space, with not only by the hyperscalers but also by private equity, that you'll see the announcements in the not too distant future. So I think one of the reasons why the US has done really well in this is there's a lot of risk capital. So while people like Paula have set up funds to do patient capital, I think India lacks risk capital. I think government has taken one initiative of funding, providing capital for GPUs. It is, I would classify that as risk capital, because we don't know whether these researchers will, how effective the LLMs will be, but it's something the government is betting on. And I think we need more private sector involvement in this space.
Sharad, can I interrupt you for a minute with a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that the case for having an India-centric or an India-driven, having your own LLM makes good sense. But also, when you think about how data is flowing in India, the Universal Payment Interface, the UPI system, means that everybody out in the market is paying online now.
Yes.
And it's truly amazing to see how that's grown. We featured that in one of our programs in the past. Do you think that's going to have a demand on sort of a different configuration between data centers and edge AI processing in India than in other places?
Great question. Let's talk about so clearly that is one of the growth drivers. If I look at the segments that are fueling the AI growth of data center growth, the financial sector, right, is probably the largest, right? 29% of our enterprise. Of course, I'm taking even if you look at within the hyperscalers. So for typically a data center provider, hyperscalers are the largest anchor customers. But within even the hyperscaler workloads, financial sector in India is the largest. It's up, I think, 29% of all workloads, and largely fueled because of UPI. So I agree with you that that's a great opportunity. Also, what happens is with this unique this data, which is which is within our borders, it gives us an edge in terms of the kind of data that we have, the volume of data that we have. We can actually leverage that, use AI on that, and there are many companies, there are many fintechs that are actually doing that in India. Maybe Paula also has invested in some of those, and maybe she can speak on a little bit about that. But yes, one of the growth drivers for data centers has been UPI, and this has to be data sovereignty along with this UPI stack. It's 20 billion transactions a month, right? It's unheard of. I mean, it's unprecedented and it's only growing. So it's pretty amazing.
So I've got one more thing for you before you go on to the sort of neo data centers,
Yeah.
and that is the energy problem. You had mentioned how connectivity had really improved in India, so
Yeah.
that really you're not dependent on one or two undersea connections and whatever. But energy is a problem everywhere. How is India uh, going to solve the energy problem for uh, the growth of this data processing?
Great question. So first of all, on renewable energy, both two large players, and the multiple players who've set up, solar, hybrid wind solar capacity, and it goes into hundreds of I think hundreds of gigawatts, if I'm not mistaken. It's Adani Green, Reliance, again, and then Tata's. All of them have set up huge renewable energy infrastructure. There's so the government has, wherever the private sector has gotten involved. So for example, in Mumbai, roughly Mumbai is like the data center capital of India. It's like the Virginia of India. In the US, Virginia is the data center capital of probably of the world. I still remember when I visited the NTT data center in Virginia, the one of the roads was called Gigawatt Drive, where most of the data centers are present. So in Mumbai, Tata Power and Adani, actually their power is as reliable as, if you look at the last 25 years statistics, it's probably more reliable than the power in the city of New York. But not, that's not true across the country. So there are many cities in India. You take even developed cities like Bangalore, Chennai, um, the Delhi, the NCR, National Capital Region, which is Delhi and Noida and Gurgaon, and you have occasional power. It is improved, but you do have occasional power outages. And so the government is, so there are people are looking at. In the last budget, the government has also looked at incentivizing research in SMRs, or nuclear power,
Okay.
small modular reactors. They are still early days even in the US, but there are at least two companies I know that are looking at bringing this technology to India, so that you don't have to rely on the grid and you can actually do it in the same campus as you build some of these large data centers. But I think that's a few years away, maybe 2, 3 years at least away. But so there's, the private sector. So there is, private sector is investing heavily in this. A government is also investing wherever there's government distribution companies and generation companies, but I think they're a little slower than some of the private sector companies, and that's why, given that Mumbai's power is mostly privatized, that's why Mumbai has actually got most of the data center infrastructure in India. But yeah, that's a problem. I used to run the global data center business of NTT before I started Neysa, and we had problems in Singapore, we had problems in Germany, we had problems in Virginia. That particular county in Virginia
Yeah.
was out of power, so we had to now then move our new data centers another. So this is a global problem, and I think it's and AI is only accelerating it,
Yeah.
exacerbating.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I was talking about some of the on the neo cloud side. So basically, I'll just talk a little bit about Neysa and what we're doing. And so we have two forms of our service offerings. One is what we call as bare metal. So for large training clusters that we set up, so one of the foundational models that is being trained in India is called BharatGen. We provide GPUs to BharatGen. This is headquartered at IIT Bombay. I think one of the good things that AI Mission has also done is it has brought government, academia, and private sector together, right? Um, and so we have most of the large foundational model training. They only need bare metal GPUs. They don't want the overhead. Moment you put an orchestration layer and you do virtualization, you end up you there's some overhead of that, and which is not necessarily ideal when you're doing training large. When you're training a foundational model, and so therefore. But then a lot of the startups and enterprise clients, when they want to do inferencing or they want to do fine tuning, they're not building foundational models. They're happy to use platform services, which is what in the globally the hyperscalers provide. And so a lot of customers and some customers use both. So it's like a hybrid setup. Some GPUs are in a private cloud setup, and some of them are in a public cloud setup. If you look at the segments, you have enterprise startups, which is AI native companies. I've classified them separately. You have the research and education institutions like the Indian Institute of Technology. There are multiple IITs, ISCs, and many other educational institutions. They need it both for research as well as for training the students on AI. And then, of course, the government. The government is not only, so government is playing multiple roles. One is, of course, the AI mission, which Paula talked so elaborately about, but it's where the purpose is not only to provide subsidized GPU capacity, but also to help create data sets. And they have this thing called AI Kosh, where all the models that are built, which is funded by government, all the it's like our Hugging Face, right, where open source models are kept, and also data sets that are, whenever they're funding this research, there's a lot of data sets that are created, some synthetic data generated, as well as data sets created by many research institutions that are available on this AI Kosh platform. But they also have centers of excellence. So government has got has so far funded 4 centers of excellence. One is in education, one is in healthcare, one is in smart cities, and one is in agriculture. So government is also a big user of this technology. Some of the use cases that we see in the space, Paula already touched upon that in one of our slides. So we see a lot of use cases in enterprises on compliance. The regulators in India keep on coming out with 50-page documents every other quarter or every quarter, asking financial companies to comply, whether it's SEBI or RBI or any of these regulators. They come up with these documents, and it's very difficult. People spend a lot of time manually doing this, and there are multiple audits that happen. Right, some are security audits, some are other compliance audits, and so there are many companies who've looked at automating this so that you can feed the entire circular into into an LLM, and then get the top deliverables that are top action items, tasks that have to be looked at, and then create a dashboard. Fan those tasks out to the respective departments, and then create a dashboard that actually provides you a view of where your compliance status is. So there are companies that have automated that process. There's anomaly and fraud detection. So, for example, India's largest UPI provider, PhonePe, which is kind of owned by Walmart, because Walmart acquired Flipkart, and PhonePe was a subsidiary of Flipkart earlier. That roughly does 50% of UPI transactions in the country. That uses our GPUs to do fraud detection in real time, to detect patterns. A company is doing call center management, and I'm sure Raoul will talk a little bit about that, because he's an expert on the voice side. There's a company called Merrill Life
Yeah,
Sciences.
and actually, I think, Sharad, we're going to need to move on pretty quick, because I asked you to kind of summarize.
No, I'm just going to summarize. There's companies that are doing drug discovery using AI, insurance companies with persistence use cases. Yeah, so I'll summarize now. In short, India's data center infrastructure is world class. We have, as of now, power is in cities like Mumbai and a few other areas. Power is not yet a major constraint. It will become soon if we don't upgrade our infrastructure soon enough. Um, as far as the GPU infrastructure is concerned, we have a long way to go, but you will start seeing announcements very soon with investments from large conglomerates, whether it's the hyperscalers, whether it's Indian companies like Tata, Reliance, and Adani, or companies like us, where we are raising significant private equity in the near future. So some of this. You you'll have a lot more GPU infrastructure in the country, so that that doesn't become a constraint.
Okay.
And so happy to answer any questions. I
So
think
actually, there is one question that has come in that I think we should address now, even before Raoul speaks.
okay.
And that is, if government data is being used by private companies for training,
Yeah.
what are the guardrails regarding privacy? Paula, you had mentioned that privacy is a very important concern. Sharad, how do you see that?
So I think it's so what the government is doing. I think it's still evolving, Richard. If you think about
Yeah.
it, the government obviously doesn't want. There are certain sectors like the UPI data, etc., the financial sector, where it has to remain within the country. It can't go outside. Government is okay if private. They want to spur. I was with the AI mission yesterday, and
Hmm.
I asked them this question, right? I asked them a question about not only this, but also the fact that, look, you're funding compute and private companies are going to do inferencing using this, and so they will benefit. You're subsidizing, taxpayer money going, and, private companies are going to profit from that. They said, we don't care right now. We want to, it will still take them a long time before
Yeah.
they make money, and we'll stop the subsidy. This is a 5-year program, and, by the time it becomes mature, we'll stop the subsidies. So that was their view. But yeah, only time will tell how this prevails. There are a lot of guardrails that the AI mission and Niti Aayog and all are working on for ethical, responsible AI. But
Okay.
but it's not yet there. The last point I'll conclude with before I hand it over to Rahul is that I think we have a great opportunity to actually build. See, India was known as the back office of the world. So we were doing call centers, we were doing BPOs. But I think with AI, what we can do is actually we can build for the world. So I think that's the message that I'd like to leave the audience with. Thank you.
We may come back to that point if we have a chance to do some discussion at the end. But first, Raoul, let me ask if you would talk about the kind of India focus, the voice first model.
So, I mean, I have to commend you guys on a fantastic panel. I think you covered the three major areas, right? Who's funding, who's building the infrastructure, and who's actually creating the end applications. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Raoul. I'm the CEO at Navana. We're building out voice AI infrastructure for Indian enterprises. And what I hope you take away from the presentation I'm giving today is how unique the voice AI ecosystem is within India, and why that requires local players to be able to solve for this. This has been a mission that we've been working on for the last 7 years or so. Just a little background on the team. So I'm Raoul, I'm the CEO. I also have my co-founder Jay, who's also my brother. He's the CTO. I'm a second time founder, actually third time founder now, and was previously, as you mentioned, in mobile gaming, prior to that in enterprise software. We both graduated from Cornell Tech in 2018, and we had the lucky opportunity to study our MBA together, and actually honed in on a specific mission in 2018, which was to make digital services accessible to this next billion user market. It was a year after the Reliance Group made mobile internet free for all for over a year. which led to a huge influx of users who were using the internet for the first time through their smartphones. And they were using smartphones that were designed by the West and coming up against a lot of friction to access the internet and digital services because of existing design paradigms, English-based interfaces. So we were seeing all around us the friction related to accessing services on a very powerful device they now had access to. So our mission was to really solve for that, and recognized early on that voice AI and voice as an interface would be that key enabling technology, and started working on that problem since then. So this is way before LLMs came about. We started really building out the infrastructure there. We've come a very long way now as an ecosystem and a market in terms of actually deploying AI services to actually solve for this problem. So I want to start with one video. I'll just play it. This is a Sanjeev Bajaj of Bajaj Finserv, one of the largest financial companies in India, fintech companies in India. And I'll just demonstrate that here.
We have a trained Gen AI tool that calls a customer back, will speak in 6 different languages, will also speak in English based on what the customer is asking, responding according to that. We are selling 10,000 loans a month. Nothing compared to 3.5 million a month that we do, but 10,000 loans a month, end to end, by this tool, giving about 150 crores out per month. And of course, we have a set of humans there to make sure that the tool is not making mistakes, is not hallucinating, but we are seeing very high accuracy levels. So this is very real, at least for sectors like ourselves.
That's interesting. Right. So I'm sure you're imagining this must be run by, Google's Gemini models or, OpenAI's GPT models. Actually, Bajaj is using Navana's Bodhi speech recognition models to be able to scale this up beyond English and Hindi. These models have been built by Navana specifically to solve for Indian languages and the complexities of Indian languages. So I'll be walking you through more around how these models have been built, some of the data that we've collected, and how we've attempted to solve this problem. Quick overview on what this actually means in the enterprise space. On top of this technology, we've built out a full AI contact center platform. This is the voice AI operating system for enterprises. They're able to build agents that can speak over 15 languages. They're able to deploy them at scale over telephony, and they're able to observe these calls over time. We also have our API platform that has both our access to our speech recognition models directly and a contact center intelligence product. This basically transcribes all calls between two humans and delivers outputs there in terms of intelligence for these enterprises. A little bit on the technology. Voice AI today runs on 3 models. So the user speaks, and you need to convert that audio into text. Now in India, I'll get into the complexity there. But if you don't get that part right, the next stage is giving that text to a large language model. And the large language model gives you a text output, which is reasonable. And then that is synthesized back into an audio format, right? So if you get the first part of this wrong, if you are unable to recognize what the user is saying correctly, it really doesn't matter if you have GPT 5000 and, a text-to-speech model that can laugh and cry in response to your users. If you get garbage in, you'll get garbage out. And so that's really why speech recognition is the key to voice AI, and specifically in India, because India is hard mode when it comes to voice AI. Every call, I think Sharad touched on this as well, right? You have background noise in every call, no matter where you are. We have over 19,000 dialects. Richard, you mentioned 22 official languages, but if you were to break this down into how we actually speak, it's 19,000 dialects. That complexity is dizzying, and we've seen this, in reality as we've been on ground engaging with our end users. And we have a really funny habit of speaking a minimum of 2 languages, sometimes 3 in a single input, right, or a single sentence. So a little more here on the dialect coverage. These are all of the dialects that we currently support. So this is data that we have collected on ground across all of these dialects. So this is the north of India. You can see the range of languages that are spoken. This is the south of India. Again, a large variety of languages being spoken along with their corresponding dialects. We've done significant amounts of work here to even just map this out. And no one really agrees even on, how many dialects there really are. No one really, even accepts the, dialect names that they themselves speak. So it's a highly complex problem that is not structured in a way where, people can build technologies very easily. I'll just play a short video here to give you a sense of what these languages sound like on ground and what our speech recognition does in the process.
हमारे एटीएम कार्ड हेरा गेलै बैंक आई बंद अछि त अहाँक मदद चाहै छी ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಲಾಗಿದೆ ಬಟ್ ಕನ್ಫರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು নমস্কার আমার ইন্স্যুরেন্স নাম্বারটি হলো 3211OUEPPJ.
So as you can see, large variety of languages, code mixed input, background noise, a lot of things to deal with that are very different from the rest of the world. And that's why you need someone local to be able to solve for these problems. Global players are building models that work for uni-language or dual language nations. And so to actually solve for all of the language complexity that we have, you need to build models from scratch. And that's what we did. From the framework up, we created models that are for real-time conversational AI and are for Indian languages. Of course, number one, every model requires its own data sets to be able to perform well. We've collected our own 12,000-hour data set, which is proprietary, along with another 15,000-hour data set, which is open source, which I'll be talking about in the next slide. This is dialect-rich data specifically built to solve for things in BFSI, agriculture, government services, things that are delivering quality of life services to customers. That's been our focus at Navana. Our models have been built to work within India. And working within India means it needs to be cheap because we have extremely high volumes. And it needs to work very quickly because if it takes time, the customer doesn't trust the product. And if you don't get the customer's trust within the first few seconds, you lose it forever. So the models themselves are 20 times smaller than OpenAI's Whisper models, which means they work very quickly and they work a lot cheaper. Another thing that we ensured we would be able to do is to actually inference on CPU and not be dependent only on GPUs. So our models can work on a variety of different hardware, which gives it a lot of flexibility, scale, and cost. A little bit more here. So last week, our paper was accepted to NeurIPS, which is one of the large global conferences for data, AI, and benchmarking. This is a project that we worked on for over 4 years with the Indian Institute of Science, backed by the Gates Foundation. We built out a 10,000-hour data set that covers over 38 dialects with 9 main languages. This covered every district of the country with over 18,000 speakers, collecting this type of data at scale, and we were happy to open source that last month. So we've been very focused on delivering for the ecosystem as we've built out this company. Without this type of data, without the work that Sharad is doing, and without the capital that Paula and other VCs are doing, none of this actually becomes a reality. So it really requires everyone to do their bit. Now, specifically for Indian enterprises, what's important is to be able to scale these systems, is to have this pan-India language cover, but more importantly, to be able to deliver this on their own infrastructure, so on their own private clouds, using sovereign AI models so the data never leaves the country, ensuring it's secure and can be scaled, right? So this is really what our focus at Navana has been in the voice AI space, is to deliver on all of these factors. A little bit on the use cases, we're seeing a huge pickup on automating voice calling within the contact center space. So within BFSI specifically, compliance calling like welcome calling, incoming calls like customer support, outgoing calls like sales for loans, which you heard Sanjeev Bajaj talk about. They've already scaled 4 times from the number he mentioned on the video. And of course, in collections, we're seeing a huge amount of automation here. So a lot of efficiency gain and a lot of quality of service to the end customer, because it's a consistent quality experience for the end customer as well. And we're seeing this currently being taken up by almost every logo in the BFSI industry within India, right? So right now, our problem at Navana is being able to handle demand. The conversations that we're having with people in the BFSI sector is not whether voice AI makes sense or not, but how fast can we get it going, and how can we scale it to the rest of the system. And this, in our estimation, is a $10 billion opportunity just in the voice AI space within BFSI. So we're lucky to be supported by a bunch of different folks here. Our last round was led by Antler. We have Sandeep Singhal, Rajan Mehra, and Ronnie Screwvala who back us, and then a bunch of fantastic logos. Of course, Aureolis led our first round ever. So Paula was one of the visionaries there. And Microsoft Research, Cornell Tech, IMA Ventures are all big supporters of the company. So yeah, great. Thank you. I'll shorten.
Yeah, thank you, Raoul. We only have time for 1 or 2 questions, but I have one follow-up question for you specifically, and
Yes.
that is this kind of language switching and so forth. What sort of hallucination problems does that present to the LLM or to the voice first model?
So in fact, if you are able to accurately transcribe phonetically, regardless of the script,
okay, yeah,
the LLMs are actually able to do a decent job of handling that. So
okay,
if you get, so for example, if like I'll give you a real example that happened yesterday. We have a customer that has an Indian English learning application, and they have users who speak Hindi but are trying to learn English. So they used our Hindi English model on the back end to transcribe. Now, what happens is sometimes a user will speak in English, but it'll get transcribed in the Devanagari script. But you see that the LLM is able to actually handle that because it understands phonetically what is being represented there and can do the translation job and fill in those gaps.
okay, great. So kind of in general questions, Paula, I'm going to direct this one to you. Anoop, early on in our session today, asked if there are opportunities for India to leapfrog on physical and real world models for things like deep tech and energy and so forth. Where do you see the opportunities for India to leapfrog?
That's a tough question. Clearly, there are opportunities, even in deep tech. I think where we will end up doing, I don't think we will leapfrog in models. I don't know if Raoul and Sharad have other ideas, but I think we will be able to leapfrog in, and energy is also difficult, I think. But I think in certain deep tech and in certain, certainly in things like, GPU, etc., I think we can leapfrog. We certainly will leapfrog in creating global application models, I think. I don't know what, Sharad, you feel about this.
I think in the with the vast data that we have in the financial sector with the UPI, I think we'll leapfrog on fintech for sure, right? So
Fintech, I think for sure. Yeah. I think in deep tech, there'll be sectors where we can do it. And thirdly, for fintech. Yeah.
we're still dependent largely on the US for chips, right? So NVIDIA and AMD, I think that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah.
So the numbers that Paula presented at the beginning, $100 billion of private sector investment last year from the United States in AI, 9 billion or almost 10 billion from China into AI, private sector investments, and a little over $1 billion from India. So the kind of obvious question is it going to be enough? Is there a need for investment to grow by 2 or 3-fold? But the other kind of question I'm curious about is, do you think India will approach this with some sort of frugal innovation, like a lot of things were done in the past? Let me ask Paula to take that one too, to start with.
I think we don't have a choice, so we will do frugal innovation. But I think in this case, there is a definite momentum to put in more because we realize that we are onto something. We have to put in more, but we won't put it in chips or in large models as much as we will put it in the infrastructure for enabling this, including setting up, compute power.
Okay. And Raoul, a lot of the Series D and Series E mega deals in the US have been because companies are spending so much, putting more and more data into training their models. How do you see that working out for Navana?
Yeah, I think see at Navana we are solving for the voice in and voice out problem, and we're leveraging what's being done on the LLM side of things. So the capital requirements for both training and data is significantly less than would be for foundational LLM models. So I don't see a massive need for the eye-watering deals that you're seeing at the D and E level for us to actually deliver value for the enterprises. I think a lot of interesting work to answer your first question that you'll see coming out of India is actually taking open source LLMs and building vertical specific, use case specific SLMs that actually solve specific problems at a very low cost and at a very high accuracy. That's the innovation you're going to see come out of India. And I think a lot of the work that we do here on that front, which we will demonstrate at scale because we have to, from day one every time, I think that'll be what we export to the rest of the world.
That's actually a fantastic note for us to end our program on this morning, morning in India. I really appreciate all of you giving such great comments, preparing so well for the session today, and providing such an information-rich session. For everybody who is following this as a series, next week we have a Singapore-based agentic AI company, Manus.ai, will be our speaker. And we look forward to seeing everybody in person at the auditorium. So thanks to everybody. Thanks especially to our speakers. We will give you dinner somehow when you come to the Silicon Valley. Look forward to getting together. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for inviting us.